The big news in Chinese stocks today was that the research firm Grizzly Research came out with a short report against PDD Holdings, which is a very fast-growing e-commerce app company based out of China that is currently dominating the App Store, Apple App Store, and Google Play Store rankings. Grizzly Research has called the firm a dying company and has furthermore accused it of various misdeeds, including abusive labor practices, accounting shenanigans, and having an unreliable auditor. As a PDD shareholder, I disagree with these claims, to put it mildly, and in this video I'll take a few minutes to explain exactly why and where I disagree. First things first, the claim that PDD Holdings is a dying company. Well, that one is pretty easily debunked. I took these two screenshots that you're seeing right now today, that is the Apple App Store top charts and the Google Play Store top charts, and as you can see, TEMU, the main app that PDD Holdings is known for in the West, is currently the most downloaded app on both platforms. Perhaps the company's accounting is bad, like Grizzly Research alleges, but the idea that the company is failing in terms of product sales really stretches the limits of credibility. Another issue with the report is that the technical claims about TEMU having loads of security vulnerabilities are actually self-contradictory. Now, Grizzly Research is obviously pretty proud of the team of experts it put together to identify all these security vulnerabilities in the TEMU app. And granted, I don't have the expertise to say that they're wrong about that or anything. I'm just going to grant them that point, that they have found a laundry list of security vulnerabilities in TEMU. However, what I can establish is that they contradict themselves when making this whole point, because they say that these same vulnerabilities were found in the Pinduoduo app, that is the Chinese language version of TEMU. Google removed Pinduoduo from the Play Store for that reason. They requested that PDD Holdings fix these security loopholes. PDD did, Google reviewed it, and reinstated Pinduoduo. This fact is not omitted from Grizzly Research's own report. They say that that happened, but that begs the question, why then would they emphasize that TEMU has similar vulnerabilities? Their own account of how it all went down with Pinduoduo suggests that once Google comes to them and asks them to change their app so that these security vulnerabilities aren't there anymore, they will simply update the app like they did with Pinduoduo. So the grand narrative that TEMU is only being used to spy on US citizens is undermined by Grizzly Research's own narrative about Pinduoduo, where they say that the PDD Holdings team dutifully removed the security vulnerabilities when requested to do so by Google. There's no reason to think that they would not comply when asked to do the same with TEMU, and if Google identifies these vulnerabilities themselves, presumably they will make that request, and PDD Holdings will have to make the fixes. None of this feeds into any narrative about TEMU being used to spy on US citizens. Rather, it's a foreign company slowly adapting to a foreign market that it's not used to, where the security regulations and the demands of companies like Google and Apple are a little different. Finally, you might notice that the Play Store is mentioned heavily in Grizzly Research's report. That's because on Apple devices, PDD Holdings wouldn't be able to exploit any of these security vulnerabilities, because actually all user data on Apple devices currently under the app tracking transparency policy is not accessible by default. You need permission on Apple devices to track user data, and Google has said that it will start moving in that direction in the near future, making Grizzly Research's point entirely moot. Another problem is that the report shows a general lack of understanding about how modern e-commerce businesses operate. In fact, not only e-commerce businesses, but really internet companies as a whole. Take this quote, for example. One of Grizzly Research's experts is quoted as saying, "Things like location data, to me, definitely raises a red flag because I am not envisioning any legitimate uses for it." Well, the use of location data by e-commerce companies is pretty simple. It allows you to identify where a person lives, find out what kind of products are popular there, and target those products to users in the area. Literally every online commerce company does this. Amazon, eBay, Shopify. In their ad platforms, Facebook and Google do it. This is completely industry standard for big tech companies these days, and I find it a little bit silly that Grizzly Research would have hired an expert who is not able to understand this. Perhaps the person does have credentials in security flaws and things like that, but to not know that location data is absolutely critical to targeting product listings or ads in 2023, I don't know, man. Grizzly Research, you might want to vet your experts a little bit better next time. Here I just want to get into kind of a series of bullet points that Grizzly Research goes into in quick succession. TEMU products as shipped often do not resemble the photos. Well, this is a story as old as time. Every fast food company has been accused of this. I don't find TEMU to be a particularly big offender. I've ordered a lot of things off TEMU, and personally I find that they generally do resemble the photos. But we know that Burger King is being sued for this now, and if they do get in trouble for it, then they're going to have to pay out some money. But I mean, that's not an argument for shorting QSR, Restaurant Brands International stock, the owner of Burger King. TEMU's products may be too small and too cheap to bother to return. Well, that could be a problem, but it's really a problem for any online vendor that sells cheap and small products. And finally, TEMU pressures vendors into impossibly low-priced, no-profit deals. Currently, PDD Holdings is in a growth phase where it is attempting to gain market share rapidly, particularly in markets outside of China. Now, as part of gaining market share, it is selling its items pretty cheap. However, the Chinese part of its business, if you look at the financial statements, is actually quite profitable, which indicates that once it is done consolidating market share, it probably will start giving its vendors more wiggle room in the prices that they're allowed to charge. And finally, the claim that PDD Holdings is losing $30 per sale on its TEMU platform. That could be the case. However, again, losing money early in the growth phase of the business is pretty standard. If we look, for example, at the rise of Pinduoduo in China, which is the Chinese equivalent of TEMU, when PDD Holdings was basically just Pinduoduo, that business lost money for a long time too because they wanted to gain market share. They were up against large incumbents like Alibaba and JD, and yes, as part of gaining market share, they did sell things cheap and run losses for a good few years. However, a few years later, we saw this financial report, which showed them finally turning a profit in China, and a few quarters later, they broke into the US market. It may well be that all of PDD Holdings' current margin comes from the China market. However, the fact that they are profitable in China tends to suggest that maybe their strategy will work in the US, Europe, and other international markets as well, and eventually be profitable on TEMU, Pinduoduo, and other platforms that they launch using this strategy. On the day Grizzly Research's report came out, PDD Holdings stock did slide somewhat. In fact, it slid a whole 5%, but declines of that magnitude were pretty typical of Chinese stocks in general on that day. So far, it's not looking like this report has had a huge market impact, although it did make a splash on Twitter, and perhaps some investors are being influenced by it. The bottom line is that PDD Holdings is not doing anything that any e-commerce company, American, Chinese, or otherwise, would do in its early growth phase. And in fact, it seems to be doing a good job of it, as indicated by its growth and its profit margins. That's it for me today. Happy savings.